August 31st is coming, and it is coming in a hurry. So get ramped up and fired up as we are here to talk some Miami football. We've got Brad Tejeda for the next hour. So load up those comments and questions. Of course, you can catch Brad every day at Canes Insight. Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you always for having me, Mark, on the show and talking some Hurricanes football. Like you said, anyone in the chat that's got questions about, fall practice so far, any questions about position groups, feel free to chime in and let us know what you got. But we'll be breaking down Canes football. As y'all know, Hurricane fans that are tuned in, we just wrapped up our 7th practice for fall camp before we get that first game started in my backyard up here in Gainesville. So can't wait.
All right, let's take off from right there because I've got a few other notes from some other areas of the program, but we'll stay with fall camp because that's what's important right now. And we got Cam Ward leading the quarterbacks. We've got a bit of a battle for the number 2 spot, which, as long as Cam Ward is upright and able, and that's the goal, of course, then that number 2 position is more about development and just making sure that that guy is ready at any point. So size up the quarterback room. I can't imagine that there's anything too shocking about what Cam Ward's doing in practice, but maybe that number 2 spot could be a little intriguing and how that's shaking out.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously for the quarterback position, you get a guy like Cam Ward, right? Everything that he is, what you've heard is exactly what's been happening throughout fall camp. So that's the great thing. Cam Ward is being Cam Ward, preseason Heisman candidate, and every quarterback award you could think of for a reason. And he's showing it. He's got a lot of Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers type of vibe to him when he's on the football field. He's making remarkable throws that only the wide receiver can get the ball. You've seen little clips throughout fall camp so far where even some of the defensive backs are like mind blown with some of these throws that he's making, to where it's like, hey man, you can't do anything about it. That's just who Cam Ward is, right? And we've never had a quarterback like that. And I would say, at least in my time being alive, I'm 31 years old, and I can't remember us having a quarterback with all the tools, charisma, and just the moxie and what he does on and off the football field like we have with Cam Ward this year. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious, all the media is behind this football team for a big time reason because of Cam Ward. Cam Ward, declined a 2nd to 3rd round possible draft pick in the NFL, came back, decided to come to Miami for one reason only, and that's to prove that he can be the first quarterback in that draft, and he believes he can be that. And in order for Miami to be as great as we hope we can be this year, it's going to be on Cam Ward. But that second position, Mark, is very interesting, right? Because I think when you rewind this last season, there was a plan that was in place, right? And I'm talking about Jakari Brown before he obviously transferred to UCF. There was a plan in place before last year, and Jakari, came out and said it as well. And the plan was to redshirt, right? Where we're going to let you redshirt this year and have you develop. Well, it seems like a plan like that is kind of in place this year when it comes to Emry Williams. When I bring up Emry Williams, this is a guy, true freshman last year, that came in and crunch opportunities after TVD struggled, came into that Florida State game and really did some damage. And also what he did against Clemson. This was a young man as a true freshman that got in there right away. Wasn't nothing crazy, but he did his job. And I think with as much talent that we had last year, and we've added even more talent, we'll break down each position group, but it's night and day with the position groups of what we had last year to this year. And if Emry Williams could just be what he was last year, which I expect him to be a little bit better another year in the program, he can be just a floor general, and we can get by and still be where we want to be this year. Are we going to reach our ceiling with someone like Emry Williams or Reese Poffenberger or Judd? Probably not, right? Cam Ward is our guy. But that QB2 will be interesting, and I think Reese Poffenberger probably will get the QB2 nod. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Emry Williams has to get in there if something drastic happens. But I think the overall plan is for Emry Williams to probably redshirt this year if possible. And I have been hearing a lot of good things with incoming freshman Judd Anderson as well throughout fall camp. Young man is 6'7", quarterback, played a lot of basketball and football, so he's a dual athlete. can use his legs very well. And him being tall, having a big offensive line, he's able to see over that offensive line and really has been doing a great job going through his progressions and making some very good throws. So Judd Anderson, probably out of all the guys besides Cam Ward, I have heard the most, positive buzz and just, hey, this guy is really making a lot of positive strides. But overall, I would say that QB2 job is probably Reese's at the moment. But if we get into a crunch situation or we just really need that guy to really just solidify and do his job, I wouldn't be surprised if Emry Williams jumps in there.
And I got to think, if nothing else, Emry Williams gained a ton of equity and credibility in that locker room with the way he performed against Florida State, stepping into a difficult situation, hostile environment, top flight defense, putting his body on the line, not just at the obvious place at the ball game that knocked him out, but throughout that game, he was all over the field making plays and doing everything he could. It just proved to be a baller and a leader on that night. Looking at the running back room, Brad, obviously a lot of attention is given to Damian Martinez based on what he accomplished in the Pac-12, but this room is now in a place where most programs at this level want to be. They want to have basically not any drop off to where they can alternate two guys and they're at the same level. They might have different styles, abilities, skill sets, but they're at that same level. And that's where you see out of the top teams in the country. They don't have one guy, they got two guys. And certainly, although people are focused on Damian Martinez, Mark Fletcher was that guy going down the stretch last season.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the running back room, right? When Miami was at its peak, when we were at its best, we didn't just have one or two running backs. We had a stable. We had 4 to 5 guys. I mean, even your fullback, I remember back in the day with Najee Davenport. I mean, he was a guy that could go in there running back as well and tote the rock, right? So you have to have a multitude of guys, 4, 5, 6 guys. And, I could go right off the bat. You brought up Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher, but we're in fall camp right now. And Damian Martinez, for one, is just getting with the program, right? So he's getting acclimated to his teammates, getting acclimated to how to play Miami Hurricane football the right way. But the talent is unquestionable. You pull up his stats. This is a guy that's averaged 1,000 yards each year in his football career. When you combine the two, this is a guy that's electric, that could do it all pretty much, run, pass, blocking as well. He came to Miami for one reason only, and that's to, hopefully get to the playoffs and national championship. And when you bring up the 01, 02, 03 teams of Miami, when we were at our peak, we had 4 or 5 guys. You had the Clinton Portises, the Willis McGahees, the Frank Gores, and so forth, so on. And when one guy got injured, they were scared, because as soon as they went down, they didn't know if they were ever going to get another opportunity. And that's what it's starting to, you're getting a buzz throughout fall camp, right? Where you mentioned Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher. Well, Mark Fletcher is progressing, and he's getting healthier a lot more quicker than what we expected, right? And I think his timetable of coming back has really vamped up and fast forward to, if he wanted to play and be, the RB1, RB2 that we expect him to be all year against Florida, I don't think he would have a problem with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they try not to use him, just because of all the generous buzz I've been getting from all these other running backs, right? Guys like Chris Johnson Jr. from Dillard High School, who is now in his second year in a college program, has put a little bit more weight on. And this is a guy that ran a 10-2 in the 100-meter dash in high school, one of the fastest players in the country. And he is being utilized very heavily throughout fall camp. And as Shannon Dawson has preached, he wants more home run hitters. He needs more electric big-time plays for this offense to go to the next level. And Chris Johnson's at the top of the list if you want some of those big-time plays. He's been doing phenomenal in the pass and running game at running back for Miami in this fall camp. You also got Jordan Lyle and Chris Hellcat Humphrey, who are 2 incoming freshmen that, again, have been getting a lot of reps just because, like I mentioned, Damian Martinez, new to the program. He's getting acclimated to his teammates, even though he is expected to be RB1 come August 31st. And Mark Fletcher progressing, coming off of his injury. You don't want to go 100% on him right away. So this is where those 3 young guys, and a Chris Johnson and a Hellcat, and others, didn't even mention Elijah Lofton, who's going to be used in that backfield as well, who's an incoming freshman from Bishop Gorman. But you have a stable of guys now that you don't really have to rely on one guy, even though we already know who our 1-2 punch is going to be this upcoming year. But do not be surprised if guys like Chris Johnson, Chris Hellcat Humphrey, and Jordan Lyle, you're going to hear those names all throughout this football season as well. And they all bring a different talent to the football field.
James Scott, thank you so much for reminding people that we've got an Amazon link. It's in the description section, and it's so easy to use. And the Amazon link just redirects you to your account. So it doesn't lose track of your account, your purchases, your record, your history, everything that needs to be tracked on Amazon. It is instantaneous. So you might as well use our Amazon link. And that way you can contribute to the channel without spending a penny. Just take Amazon's money and send it to the Voice of College Football. Just do that. All right. Appreciate you being here, everyone. Comments and questions coming in. We got our guy Leroy, the Black Ninja Turtle. If we go 1-1, trying to think who does. I've opened up the schedule in front of me here. Week 2 is Florida A&M. So, well, we know where that loss is coming from. Okay. If we go 1-1, who and how would we lose that game?
So
11-1. 11-1. Sorry.
11-1.
I just ordered some new contacts last week. They haven't arrived yet. 11-1. Okay, I was like, well, what's it matter if you go 1-1? It's basically 0-1 because it's Florida A&M. 11-1, Brad. That's a good problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one game would probably be between. If I had to guess, I would say between Florida State and Virginia Tech. Those are the two games I would circle in conference. That Virginia Tech game going on a Friday. Positive note, you're playing at home, so you don't have to listen to that crazy crowd in the background with Sandman behind it. But you do have to play on a Friday night against a pretty good opponent in Virginia Tech, which I expect to also be undefeated during that point of the season. So it's going to be a primetime matchup on Friday nights. We're going to have to find out if we can come to play. And as we know, both quarterbacks have a lot in common, right? Not only are they quarterbacks for their program, but these guys are relatives as well. I believe they're first or second cousins, the quarterback for Virginia Tech and also Cam Ward. They've been training all offseason together. There's a lot of bragging rights between the two. And I think Virginia Tech is bringing back a lot of key pieces. I believe they're one of the top programs in the nation that are bringing back the majority of their starters. And they have a lot of good pieces on the defense side of the ball that can really bring some pressure on offensive line. So that's going to be the game to watch. It would be, one of those just Friday night things if we're going to come to play of how we lose the game. I would expect it more on coaching or just, being out there lackadaisical and not doing the small things in order to win a football game. That's how you lose that game. Or the other one would probably be Florida State. And, of course, it's just a rivalry game. Florida State's also a team that's expected to do pretty well this year. So you can never know what's going to happen with a rivalry game. But those are the one or two games I would say if I had to say who and how we would lose our game.
This is the month of predictions. All sorts of people out there running around giving their predictions. And, of course, I'm going to be one of them. But a lot of people out there, and you see their game-by-game predictions, and usually it's chalk. It is just a prediction of basically we already knew that this is where this team is a favorite against all these other teams, and this is probably where they're going to lose their 2 or 3 games or whatever it is for that particular team. However, I'm no betting expert. I'm not an odds maker or handicapper, but I do track it fairly well. And about 25% of the games in the top 25 every week, it's like clockwork, Brad. So 25 top 25 teams. And then of course, some of them play. So there's usually about 21, 22 games in the top 25, 4 or 5 will be upsets every week. You can mark it down. It's just a matter of finding those. So yeah, I'd say 3/4 of the games you can see preseason and say, well, Miami's going to struggle against Florida State. And if they do, it could be Virginia Tech. And those would be the ones. And that's totally logical. But about 1/3 of the time, 1/4 of the time, it's going to be some random team that's going to jump up and bite someone. And again, I'm not talking about Miami. I'm talking about holistically across the board. And if it was Miami, I would say, what's your next best candidates? Probably, oh man, it's kind of tough to find a loss after those two. I
I mean,
guess.
you talk about being favored, right? And I think we're favored in every game this football season. And and in the past, that's been the case for the majority of our games as well. But this is the year where you got to play some football and win and get some W's. At the end of the day, there's no more excuses. You got all the talent, top to bottom. I mean, we got the guys, you got the coaches. It's time to go out there and show what you can do.
Okay, I guess the third obvious game would be at Louisville. That
Yeah,
would be
Louisville would be an interesting one. You got your former running back in Don Chaney over there now that is probably napping at the bits to ready to get back at his former program. We also got former coach Derek Nicholson, and also former linebacker Jalen Alderman on our team as well. Going against Louisville, so that should be an interesting game as well. But one thing I can say is Miami's got weapons. Cam Ward has a ton of guys. We mentioned Cam, the quarterback room, and the running back room. But this wide receiver room, Mark, is nothing to play with. And I'm glad it's not just Miami fans seeing it. When you look at the media, again, I believe the Biletnikoff Award preseason candidates just came out here today or yesterday. And Miami, Mark, is the only college program that has 3 preseason Biletnikoff Award nominees, and that's Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, and Sammy Brown Jr. So the fact that I've mentioned this time and time again, Miami is bringing 3 800-plus yard wide receivers from last season on this roster to go along with Elijah Arroyo, who hasn't even touched the surface of what he's capable of at tight end, along with 1,000-yard running back and Damian Martinez to pair with Mark Fletcher. So I love the wide receiver room that we have, not just to mention those 3 guys that, are all around the world, at least in the country, people know of, but you also got Isaiah Horton, who changed his number this year to number 2 and is looking to be a breakout player who's really transformed his body and game, taking it to a next level. And he has done an amazing job all throughout fall camp so far. He, along with the 3 guys I just mentioned, have been, generating a lot of buzz throughout practice. Sammy Brown, just got with the team in the last couple weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly he can adapt as well, similar to Damian Martinez. But I expect both of those guys to be big-time guys for this program all season. But when you look at after those 4 guys, I think that's when it really gets interesting. You got guys like Ray Joseph, who's put on a ton of, good weight from last year. He was a guy that was really electric and fast. But as soon as he got hit, you can see that he got hit. And he just really needed to adapt to college football a little bit more, put some more good weight on him, which he has. And I expect Ray to have a big-time role, not only in the offense, but also in the special teams. You got Josiah JoJo Trader, who everyone in the country knows of, right? He's a phenom incoming freshman who is going to be definitely used in this offense this year. Even though he's a freshman, I expect him to play a lot of snaps and be a big-time contributor to this football team because he's just a true football player. When you got a guy like Jeremiah Smith and seeing what he's doing up there in Ohio State right now, you got to give JoJo Trader a look because he's a guy very similar, has a lot of similar traits to Jeremiah Smith and can be used in a lot of different ways. You also got Nikar and Shamar Kirk, the JUCO transfer from last year. Those 2 guys are really stepping up as well. Like we mentioned with the running back room, when you bring guys like Damian Martinez to pair with already Mark Fletcher, right? You have no choice if you're a Chris Johnson or incoming freshman like Jordan Lyle or Hellcat, or even a guy that's been here for a year, and AJ Allen. You have no choice but to step up your game because you're bringing in alphas in the room, right? And that goes for the same thing with the wide receiver room. And we mentioned, the 3 Biletnikoff pre-nominee guys. That makes it to where guys like Isaiah Horton needs to step up. Guys like Ray needs to step up. What is someone like Shamar Kirk going to do? How is he going to, battle adversity? That's a young man that has really been, anytime the spotlight has been on him, whether it's been a spring game, spring practice, or up here in fall camp, he's another guy that's been doing a lot of great stuff. It seems like almost every wide receiver in this room, very similar to the running back and tight end room. It doesn't really matter what name you come up. There's something good or positive you've heard either through spring or fall so far. So that's what you like to hear. And that kind of wraps up the wide receiver room. You got a lot of guys up there that I really think are going to get quality snaps. You got about 7 or 8 guys that I think Shannon Dawson's going to be able to rotate all throughout the year.
Brad Tejeda, Keen's Insight. Get on over there. Check out what Brad and the crew have available there. What have you guys been working on?
Man, we got a ton of stuff, man. Like you know, we're constantly putting out new podcasts, whether it's D Money and Peter or myself. I just interviewed our recent commit last night, and Dante Simpson, a defensive lineman out of Chaminade Madonna, who flipped from Maryland to Miami. Got a chance to talk to him for about 30 minutes last night, so I got that interview up. Also did like a 9-minute pre-sequel to the Miami Florida game. Try to get some Miami fans hyped up for that. I dropped that on my social media as well. Something, kind of cool that kind of got inspired by D Money doing these preseason, videos and podcasts. So I did something similar to that to myself. So make sure you check that out. But we're always doing good things, man. Whether it's interviewing recruits or interviewing players on the team, man, we're always bringing you the latest info over there at Keen's Insight.
Folks, that gives you a great example of what's going on at Keen's Insight right there, because Dante Simpson is the last recruit in the door. His commitment just came down August 2nd, defensive lineman out of Hollywood, and boom, Brad's got him on the show. So there you go. Of course, he's not highly regarded in regards to the rankings, but there's obviously a reason that Miami went after him. So what's your take and what's his profile look like right now?
A high motor guy, a young man that literally just eats, breathes, sleeps football, right? And I mean, all these kids that I've interviewed throughout the years, especially under Mario Cristobal, they all got the same things in common, man. You talk to them, they got a very good head on their shoulders. They present themselves very well on and off the football field. They're hungry. And then you throw on the tape, man, and they're dogs, right? All they want to do is be great at football. There is no, playing the video games, wanting to be a Twitch streamer or anything like that. We want football players. We want Miami to be great. And this is a young man, in the backyard of Miami that, was committed to Maryland at one point. And then after he committed to Maryland, he actually went to a camp, I believe in South Florida. Once that camp finished, Miami liked what they saw and immediately offered the young man. So it was late in the recruitment process. And he immediately felt like it was home. It was a dream come true for him. This is one of the few guys where, that slogan kind of goes in favor with Miami, especially a guy locally. When you hear, this is my dream school, it usually doesn't go the right way, right? But this is one that has. And this is a young man that can play, 2-tech, 3-tech, however you want on the defensive line. He's a young man that had a pick six. So he's very versatile. He's very quick. You look at a guy like Justin Scott, Artavius Jones, some of these athletic defensive interior guys that we're bringing in. He's another guy that kind of fits that mold, and he plays at a premier high school, Chaminade Madonna, who has been in the state championship in the last 8 years. So he knows what it takes to be a top tier program, and that's what you want to see and continue to build for this recruiting class. So I like Dante Simpson, very good young man and a great interview.
Offensive line, Zack Carpenter comes in from Indiana, brings a wealth of experience, just adds to all the experience that was already there. 121 career starts is what I'm seeing there out of the offensive line. That was a huge strength and pretty much the turnaround position on this team over the last couple of years. So can these guys be just as good up front this year?
Yeah, I think, the Zack Carpenter was one of those names that I was very intrigued to see how quickly the relationship between him and Cam Ward get, here with fall camp. Because as we saw last year, even though the season didn't end up how we wanted, one position group where it just seemed like every single week we didn't have to worry about, and he was a true leader on and off the football field, was Matt Lee. And he is going to be missed very dearly at this program. I wish we could have a bunch of Matt Lees on these offensive line, but of course we don't. We do have a lot of great talent, though. Don't get no doubt about that, and we'll be talking about those guys. But with Zack Carpenter, he's a guy that's already played at a big time program, like you mentioned. So this should be a good transition being into the ACC. I want to see how he adapts to a crazy loud environment. First game of the year, 3:30 in the Swamp. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. It's going to be sweaty. And as we know, that ball, the protection between the center and the quarterback is going to be very key. You want to make sure you limit those turnovers, especially playing at a hostile environment like the Swamp up here in Gainesville. And knowing, the past of the turnover margin of Cam Ward. That's going to be one thing that he's going to want to hone in on and make sure he limits throughout this football year. And I think it's going to be very key, the relationship between Zack Carpenter and Cam. But from everything I've heard, Zack Carpenter has been as advertised and is doing a very good job communication-wise and really just being that guy that they're hoping he can be this year. But, as we know with Maribel and Cristobal, they always have other plans and backup plans. And, of course, they love cross-training. So when I'm talking about that, some of these names that I'm saying and what has been happening behind the scenes in practice lately, there's been a lot of movement going around. This isn't just a football team that is already set in stone on their starting 5 offensive line, and they're just using those 5 guys every single snap with everything single practice. That's not how it is, right? What they're doing right now is they're switching guys around at all times. You may see Francis Manoa at center at times. You may see Jalen Rivers at center at times. So they are trying different things. But from left to right now, I think what you're seeing set in stone as of right now is Jalen Rivers, left tackle. Left guard is probably going to be Samson Okinola right now. It's a battle between him and McCoy, but I like what I'm hearing about Pancake right now. He's making a lot of good strides. So I like Pancake at left guard, Zack Carpenter at center, Inez Cooper at right guard, and Francis at right tackle. But there is going to be a lot of movement and transitions throughout the year if needed. As we know, injuries happen, and when one guy goes down, you need to already have a backup plan in place and make sure that all these guys know what they're doing in different spots and positions at all times. And that's the reason for this cross-training and why it works so well under Maribel and Cristobal. They've been doing an excellent job at that. So that, guys like Markel Bell may see some snaps later on in the year. Someone like McCoy and others, even a guy like Tommy Kinsler is starting to progress a little bit more. And Ryan Rodriguez, I think he gets a lot of knock. But he's a guy that, if Zack Carpenter ever goes down and you don't want to move someone in the inside, I think Ryan Rodriguez is a guy that wants to kind of showcase that he belongs in a Miami Hurricane uniform. And I think he's doing everything on and off the football field. Maybe he might get his time one day. Who knows? But at the end of the day, Miami has about 8 quality guys at the offensive line right now that they have no problem putting at any position. And that's, kudos to Mario, Mirabal, and the rest of the staff, Ed Pata and others, that it's just been night and day transition from about 3 years ago.
It became apparent the last couple of days from Florida camp that Miami may not have to face Montrell Johnson, who's one of the best running backs in the SEC. He's doubtful, but we shall see over the next couple of weeks. It is possible that he could suit up against the Canes. So that's going to be a defensive line situation there, of course, as Miami takes on running games throughout the ACC and Florida to start. So let's go to D-line. And any positions or key backup spots that need to be determined there, Brad?
There's a few. I mean, when you talk about the defensive line, this is going to be by far probably our deepest room on the football team. And that's saying a lot because I just talked about how deep our running back, wide receiver room, and I didn't even talk about the tight end room and what I expect that to be this year, along with the offensive line, 8 to 9 guys I talked about. But this D-line group, Mark, is unbelievable. And well, the craziest part about this is all the guys that you expected to already have buzz about in the fall, they have buzz. But the crazy thing is the more buzz you're hearing from the defensive line group are actually from the guys that we expected to either fall off or just back down. And that's not happening, right? Guys like Anthony Campbell. This is a young man who's 6'7", came from a smaller program, didn't even hear his name at all last year. He's probably one of the biggest guys, biggest units on the football team, and he is really showcasing himself all throughout fall camp. He is a guy. He's not one of the youngest guys on the team, so he brings some veteran leadership as well. But he's a guy that's hungry. And when you talk about the interior defensive line group, I mean, you brought in guys like Simeon Barrow, Marley Cook, CJ Clark to pair with your Justin Scott, Artavius Jones, and Ahmad Moten and others, right? And I was very skeptical on where this guy in Campbell was going to fit, if he would even, crack a rotation. But he's doing more than that, Mark. He is right there with the second team, even sometime getting first team reps at times. But this is going to be a defensive line group where it really doesn't matter who gets the nod, first team or second team. This is going to be a group by committee at all times. You're going to see guys rotating all throughout the football game, whether it's, late second quarter going into halftime or late in the fourth quarter when it gets down to crunch time. Mario Cristobal has been very clear in interviews where that's where he wants to bring guys that have high motor and have a lot of energy. And that's where that D-line group is really going to come in. You're going to have guys like Marquise Lightfoot, Cole McConaughey, Malik Bryant, Elijah Alston that are going to be able to come in situations, Booker Pickett, Elias Rudolph. And that doesn't even, bring up the Ruben Baines and Akeem Ezador. Mark, Akeem Ezador is a guy that came off of injury, didn't play at all in the spring because he was waiting on a new cleat that had to be custom made for his foot. Came back in fall camp, and he's been one of probably the highest upside and the most impactful guy on the defensive side of the ball, at least on the D line so far throughout fall camp, has probably been Akeem Ezador. So you like what you hear from a guy like that who's very hungry and motivated to get back with this team and really make a stamp like he did his first year at the University of Miami. So when you compare, a guy like Ruben Bain with Akeem Ezador and a Tyler Barron, Elijah Alston, and others, this defensive line group is going to be tremendously deep, Mark. So I'm not really too worried about who starts. There's a lot of different packages that we're going to use all throughout the football season, especially with that defensive line group, the NASCAR package and others. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm very sorry for all the offensive tackles and offensive line and quarterbacks that are going to be facing this defensive line all throughout the football season. And it's going to start week 1 against Florida. And man, that offensive line in Florida, not only am I not worried about that offensive line group, but those are guys that have maneuvered all different position groups. They've never played together in the same position group. And I can't wait to see this defensive line eat.
Okay, well, that's going to make things easier for guys like Francisco Mauanoa, who led the team with 62 tackles last year. Let's not shortchange him. 82 tackles. And they lose the next 3 tacklers. Wesley Basaint factors into the linebacking core as well. How do you feel about the linebackers?
Again, another group that's really just taking it to another level. You mentioned Kiko Manoa, who was one of our guys to go to ACC Media Day. Obviously, our leading tackler from last season didn't play in spring camp, similar to his brother Francis, but they're back out there in fall, looking great as always. But Wesley, you mentioned Wesley Basaint out of Miami Central in his 3rd year. This is definitely the year where, everything's going to have to click for Wesley because if it doesn't, we have other guys that we brought in from other programs and also other guys that are really just taking a next step up that are ready to take that spot. And I think it's very key for a guy like Wesley to put on more weight and to really start to mold into a true linebacker. I mean, I think you're starting to see that in fall camp. He's really put on some good weight where he's starting to form and look like a true linebacker, what you're looking for. And he's really doing all the right things. I think he's a guy that he has to be a sure tackler. He's got to be at the right places at the right time and be utilized in different ways. And we have a lot of different linebackers that we're going to be putting in different scenarios. Jalen Alderman, who I mentioned at the beginning of the show, transferred from Louisville, who was probably one of Louisville's best linebackers last year. We ended up snagging him along with the linebackers coach, bringing him to Miami. And Alderman is definitely going to be in the rotation, especially in passing game. You also got guys like Popo, Raul Aguero, that is really stepping up. He's a guy that's a true sophomore and is ready to take that step. So I expect him to be in a role at time. And Chase Smith. Chase Smith has been at this program for 4+ years, has been battling injuries all throughout his career, and he's finally healthy. He's a guy that, if he could put it all together, I expect him to make some noise as well, not only in the linebacker room, but also on special teams. And then, of course, you got a young incoming freshman in Cameron Bobby Pruitt out of the state of Alabama that can be utilized in so many different ways. And he's just got the talent and the mindset, and he's very hungry. And his football IQ is through the roof, who's a guy that can just be thrown in different scenarios, and you don't really have to worry about him too much. He's a guy that's going to be also making his stamp in that linebacker room as well.
Okay, Brad, now we get to the position that I would think, unless you correct me on this one, probably needs the most work. 3 incoming transfers, of course. Michelle Powell at the safety spot, mixing up the corners and safeties, but Michelle Powell played a ton of football, championship level football at Washington. Deanna Hill incoming from Marshall. So sort out the corners and safeties for us and your hope that they improve and who could really step up.
Again, the same way I talked about the interior defensive line group or defensive line in general, it's starting to how I'm starting to get the same buzz with the cornerback room, right? We brought in guys from other programs and we expected them to be those guys that we're hearing the buzz from, or just the guys that from last year that are still here. We expect them to do what they do best. But it's actually been other guys as well that we want to improve that we really haven't seen much from in the last couple of years. A guy like Robert Stafford, who's been at this program for a couple of years now. He is a guy that all the lights are starting to turn on for him. He's a guy that could be utilized not only in the cornerback room but also in special teams. He's a tremendous athlete. When the ball's in the air, not only can he go up and get it, but then he could also take it to the house. He's a true ball hawk and a great football IQ. And I think he just needed everything to come together. And he's starting to really click. And he's a guy that's really stepped up throughout fall camp is Robert Stafford. So I like what I hear from Robert Stafford, along with the guys that, have already been here and done their job. Guys like Daryl Porter, Jedias Richard, and then you also had Mish Powell, like you mentioned, right? I think between those guys and Damari Brown playing most of the slot and nickel for the University of Miami, I think that's going to be mostly your rotation for the cornerback room. De'Ani Hill, transfer from Marshall, got a nice little pick in his first couple practices in a Miami Hurricane uniform. So you like to hear about that. But I think the safety room is going to be the more intriguing spot for me in the secondary. We already know about Mish Powell and, of course, Jaden Harris, who is really going to have to be that guy to step up, not only on the field, but also off the field. Going to have to be a lot more vocal and be that leader in the room, which I expect him to be, and also make a transition to really be a guy heavily relied on in that back room in the secondary when we do have the ability to move Mish Powell in the slot to give us our best mix of guys back there. But besides them, I think the only other guy that I've been hearing a lot of buzz from is probably Markeith Williams. Markeith and Zaquan Patterson are both guys that have really been making a name for themselves throughout fall camp as well. Zaquan, being a true freshman from Chaminade Madonna, is really just a tremendous football player and athlete, and is really just taking that next step to be a guy that can be thrown into the mix. And then you also got a few other guys. Markeith Williams, like I said, he's a guy that is probably going to be in there for more passing down situations. He hasn't put in enough weight on, in my opinion, to be put in the running game at times. But he's a guy that, again, is stepping up, another ball hawk. And when the ball's in the air, he's going to go up and at least try to make a play. So I like what I've been hearing from Markeith Williams. And even a guy like Taylor, Jason Taylor's son, even though he was a guy that transferred from Arizona and had some good college snaps over at that program, he's a guy that's starting to make a name for himself and make some big plays in fall camp as well. So that's what you like to see, right? You want to get a good mix of some of these true freshmen that have only been in the program for a month or two to really showcase the talent they got and show that, they belong to be on a D1 Green Tree football field with the rest of these other guys that you brought in from transfers from other big-time programs that have already showcased what they can do. When you get a good mixture of the two, all it does is elevate the guys that you already have in the program that have been in there for 2 or 3 years. And what you want is them to hope for them to blossom finally. And you're seeing that with guys like Anthony Campbell, Robert Stafford, and a few other guys. So that's what you like to see.
Of course, this defense took a pretty sizable jump in production in regards to most of the metrics from 2022 to 2023. We can look at Lance Guidry and what he brings to the table, the talent upgrades, kind of the combination of the two. How would you rate Lance Guidry's abilities, his skill set, what he brings to the table, and why he's effective?
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, Lance Guidry, out of the two coordinators we have, Dawson and Guidry, I think Guidry has been doing an excellent job compared to Dawson. Not throwing any shade at Dawson, but I just think Guidry, with the pieces he's had, being able to rotate a lot of guys, especially last year, the defensive line group, we were falling apart very quickly with injuries. And besides Ruben Bain, you didn't really have other guys to really work with or step up. And I thought we put our offense in positions at times to really get the job done and at least get away with a victory. And unfortunately, that didn't happen a lot of the times. And I do think at times when Guidry would make the right calls on defense, unfortunately, we did have a few guys that, as big as their names were, they were very, abysmal at times where we relied on them and they didn't make the right plays at the right times, and it really hurt us in the secondary. And I think we're going to be playing a lot safer, and it's a good thing. I don't think you're going to have guys that are going to play a lot of hero ball this year. I think it's going to be more a collective group, which is what you're going to want. And then we have superheroes and Avengers all throughout the football team. So I can't wait to see how it all gets together. But again, this is the first time that Miami has had both coordinators back in 2 years. So I think that alone, you're going to see a huge improvement in not only the defense, but also the offense. And Shannon Dawson, even though I expected him to do more with the offense last year, the jump he made from 2 years ago to this past year, I mean, we were still a top 30, 35 offense in the country, and we left a lot of points on the board with a quarterback that was very mediocre. So I expect this to make another jump and hopefully be a top 10 offense this year.
Coaches poll came out this week. Miami's at 17. I didn't look at it again. I'm almost positive that's the number 17. The AP poll will come out in a couple weeks. Just a different dynamic in the college football playoff era because it's just for fun and games and to get a gauge on what people think of these teams, because it goes out the window when the playoff committee starts to size this up near the end of October. But still, I think it's pretty close with what the Vegas odds say about Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. Again, they're a couple spots, those two programs ahead of Miami in the coaches poll. But what's your thoughts about seeing Miami in the 17 spot to start?
I think we're right where we need to be, right? Me personally, I don't really take too much weight in the preseason rankings. Don't really mean much to me. Once football, starts, that's when it really happens. I expected us to be around 15, so 17 is right around that, so I'm okay with it. I think Miami we still got to go out there and prove it, right? I didn't want to be in the top 10. Out of the top 25, I think we probably would have been a little bit slightly disrespected, to be honest. I mean, we got just so much talent and weapons where it's going to be hard not to rank us. So I like the ranking of where we are. And I think that first game against Florida is really going to showcase and put this team on the map to really, say, hey, this is a different Miami football team, and maybe you guys should start believing. And that's going to start week 1 in the Swamp at 3:30, August 31st. Because as bad as, people expect Florida to be this year or how tough their schedule is, they still have some talent on that roster. And make no doubt about it, any team that goes into that environment, first game of the year, it's 0-0. Whatever happened last year is off the table. Every team in college football believes they are the best team until that whistle blows when it comes to the week 1. And there's not too many environments in college football that is going to be as crazy and noisy like the Swamp, especially week 1. So we're going to have to go in there in a crazy environment, probably going to be the craziest environment we play all year. So it's going to be battle tested, but we have the guys to do it. So it's up to us to really get the W and show what we can do.
Yeah, that's a good point. People should not confuse what Florida's record probably is going to be at the end of the year versus how good they are and how talented they are. They're 5-7. Maybe they'll do better than that. I'm just throwing out a record. Shoot, Vegas has them at 4.5. They're 5-7, could be 8-4 somewhere else. And on top of it, yes, once you get into the Swamp, consider this. Florida had pretty bad seasons the last 2 years, and they beat Tennessee like a drum at home last year. Tennessee finished 9-4, top 15. And the year before, Utah team that went to the Rose Bowl, won the Pac-12 championship, they lost in the Swamp. So it's not an easy assignment by any stretch.
Yeah, and I think we'll see what type of Florida team they have when it gets closer to August 31st. Because like you mentioned earlier with Montrell Johnson, being a little banged up, we'll see who is there and ready to go for not only Florida, but us as well, because we still have a bunch of practices to go. So we need to make sure we get injury free all throughout camp. But if you lose a guy like Montrell Johnson, I mean, you got to remember, Mark, before this even started kicking off here, they already lost their number 1 running back and Etienne to their arch rival of Georgia. And said, oh, no, he's not really RB1. We have RB1 in Montrell. That's our guy. Well, you also lost your key number 1 receiver, who was most of your offense last year, Ricky Purcell, to the draft. Your number 1 wide receiver this year that you expect is a guy that's never had 100 yards in one football game in a college football career, and that's Trey Wilson. Yes, he's electric, but screen passes and sweeps can only get you so far. How are you going to, where's the deep ball and the big time plays going to come with Florida, especially if you don't have a guy like Montrell Johnson to start week 1? Where's your running game going to come from, Mark? If you lose Montrell Johnson, along with, losing Etienne to your arch rival, your third string running back, I believe, is Trayon Webb, who only has 163 career rushing yards in college football. Your other running backs besides him are either true freshmen or a JUCO running back that hasn't played D1 football. So you are working with limbs at this point. And I fully expect DJ Lagway to get reps at quarterback week 1, not only because he is a 5-star player that, if this is Billy Napier's last year, you're gonna have to bring out all the guns you can, because this is your last show to really showcase what you got. If you don't end up being a good coach this year and losing, most of the games that people expect you to, Lagway is probably not going to be at Florida anyways, and neither are you, right? So the least you could do is give the guy some burn, and maybe it'll save you a job if maybe he turns out well, and maybe he stays at Florida, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't have a running game, I know Graham Mertz can't really run the ball. So that's where DJ Lagway's legs might have to come in, and it might be something similar to how Chris Leak and Tim Tebow worked out, back in the day for Florida. But they're going to have to come up with a lot of different tricks and things up their sleeves, because I don't see that offense having a lot of firepower to keep up with the defense of Miami.
No, it's a great point. Across the board, you covered it pretty well there. Running back is Florida's one of their big strengths going into the offseason, but the top 2 guys are elsewhere, either in the trainer's room or in Athens, Georgia. And Montrell Johnson is not a home run hitter. He's a really good back, but he's not a home run hitter anyway. And then, we just had a Florida breakdown with our guy, David Waters from Gators Breakdown the other day. And they picked up a Tulane running back who had a nice start to his career, but he's basically working on another surgery. So he's probably not even going to see the field. And Ricky Pearsall turned himself into a number 1 draft pick, and he's gone. They made 2 decent pickups in the transfer portal with Elijah Badger from Arizona State and Chimere Dike from Wisconsin, but they're possession guys that aren't going to make huge impacts on a game, catch a couple balls. So it's going to be difficult to find offense. Graham Mertz, really good, but not dynamic. He's the furthest thing from Anthony Richardson, and had a great season in the pocket, but man, he can't shoulder an offense by himself. He's not that kind of player. Yeah, it's a tough find to come up with points for them in this game when you put it that way.
Yeah, again, I think there's going to be a lot of trick plays, a lot of reverses. I mean, one thing they do have is they have a lot of speed. And the key is you're going to have to utilize that speed and put them in situations where Miami's not expecting it, because Miami also has a lot of speed. So it's not like you're going to just be able to throw, take a sweep to the right and kind of beat the guy to the sideline and hope it works. It's not going to happen. But they do have a lot of track stars and speed on their team. So they're going to have to be creative and utilize them very wisely. And I think Billy Napier, this being, his 3rd year at Florida, he knows he's on the hot seat. He's going to have to come up with, some tricks and ponies to really get some W's this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up with some trick plays week 1 against Miami to find ways to get points on the board, right? I think the key for Miami is going to be limit turnovers. And anytime you are in the red zone, you need to capitalize on points, whether it's 3 or 7. You got to come away with points every time you can when you're in a tough environment like the Swamp.
Yeah, I know Miami fans aren't shedding a tear, but it doesn't seem like Billy Napier can catch a break. He loses his number 1 running back, most likely with facing a schedule that is one of the most brutal we've ever seen. And it just happened to be the year that the SEC gives him the toughest schedule, that they scheduled Miami, UCF, and Florida State outside the conference. So,
next year's schedule for Florida won't be any different. I don't think it might be like 1 or 2 games differently, but they're going to have a tough schedule next year too. So I think if whoever's the coach next year, if it is Billy or someone else, they're going to be walking into a tough first year.
Yeah. What Brad's alluding to, everyone, there is that the SEC, obviously, with the 2 new teams coming in, basically said, okay, we want to test out a schedule. So we're not going to go into with some kind of long-term plan. So we're going to schedule 24 and 25. And basically all you do is flip the schedule, and everyone you played on the road, you play at home and vice versa. So they're playing everyone the same. And so unless a ton of teams just do a backflip in the SEC, which is not likely to happen, that all of a sudden Ole Miss, LSU, and Georgia become bad football teams. They've got a rough run for a couple of years. Wow. All right. Super sticker from Falconer TRX. We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for that. And Leroy coming back with this one. Will the kicker, Andy Borgalis, win the best kicker in college football? So you got that as well. If it somehow comes down to a kick in the swamp, you got to be about as confident as anyone in the country.
One thing about Andy Borgalis, one thing he does not lack is confidence. I've known this kid since he was probably a freshman or sophomore in high school. I remember being we would be driving in the truck, and this man would be next to me while we would go watch his older brother kick on Saturdays and Fridays at the Hard Rock. So seeing his career pan out and just mature, it's awesome to see for not only Andy but that whole Borgalis family. I love that family to death, man. Very good people. And Andy, if there's one thing he's chasing this year, it's the best kicker. I think it's the Groza Award.
Yes, the Lou Groza Award.
Yeah, so I mean that's the only thing that his older brother Jose has got on him right now. So I think Andy is going to do everything he can possible. Me personally, I think he got snubbed last year for it. He should have got it last year. But I think if Miami is going to be one of those top 10 teams this year in college football, Andy's going to have to do his thing as well, and he'll have a lot of points and a lot of opportunities to get it done. And I love Andy Borgalis in crunch time situations, and the confidence always grows the more pressure that's on him. So I expect Andy Borgalis to get that award. So I agree with Leroy on that one.
22 of 26 last year, 4 of 6 from plus 50 yards compared to the winner last year, which was Graham Nicholson of Miami of Ohio. Somebody in the Power 5 picked him up. He went somewhere. Just curious to see his numbers from last year. But yeah, I cannot remember where he went. But as you might expect, if you win the Groza Award at Miami of Ohio, you're going to be kicking for a Power 5 team the next year. 27 of 28. I don't know what the breakdown is, plus 50. So, of course, the two teams played, and that wasn't much of a game, 35-3, but that's not Nicholson's fault, but he kicked one. So
no, I think Andy's going to have a lot of opportunities this year to get it done. And like I said, there's a ton of talent on this team, a lot of preseason award candidates all throughout the football team. And I think this is going to be the year where hopefully we get a lot of guys the recognition and flowers they deserve on this football team.
All right, Brad, we appreciate you making this happen. Thank you so much for this. It really updates us on camp and everything that's going on, and gives us a great overview on the team. And this is one of the guys that gets it done when it comes to Miami football coverage right here, folks. It's pretty amazing, his contacts and what he puts together there. He and everybody else at Canes Insight. So once again, Brad, everything that you need to get across to these folks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it as always for letting me stop by and talk some Canes football. Like I said, we just wrapped up practice number 7 today on Wednesday. You got the next, 3 or 4 days that we'll be practicing. I believe we got scrimmage on Saturday. So, that first scrimmage in fall camp is really what sets kind of the depth chart going into August 31st. So make sure you guys tune in to Canes Insight and everything we're doing over there, and get all the latest news for Miami Hurricanes football. Appreciate you.
Awesome. I'm just going to stay on here for a second and knock out a few administrative tasks. So, Brad, we will let you go. Thanks so much for stopping by.
No problem, Mark. Thank you, and have a great day.
You too, Brad. Brad Tejada, Canes Insight, and we are here at the Voice of College Football, of course, typically with Cam Underwood from State of the U on Wednesday nights. Cam couldn't make it this week. We appreciate Brad stepping in on a Wednesday for us. So please share this video, get it out there on social media, let people know that we're talking Miami football with all of you each and every Wednesday and throughout the week. Check out the other video clips and so forth. Also, keep in mind that Monday through Friday, now that we have passed media days and we're full throttle here at the Voice of College Football, when are we not full throttle? We're full throttle college football in May around here, but Monday through Friday on the main channel, over on the main national channel. If you're not aware, we've got a national channel. This isn't all we do, Miami. We do everything else. We have 25 channels, I do believe. So on the main national channel, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time every day. Give me a call. Join the conversation. There's going to be so much to talk about. Already has been. Just in the last couple of days, of course, the Michigan violations and all that business going on with the Wolverines. We have not been able to shake that. Everyone wants to talk about that, but we've looked at, we almost got into the most hated man in college football today, but all sorts of ratings and rankings and analysis there with us at 10 a.m. Eastern time. That is every Monday. Also, keep in mind, everyone, that we know you're psyched about football, and you should be, and that's great. But let's not forget about fitness. Take care of yourself first and foremost. Do that, because you can't take care of everything else and enjoy the football if you're not in shape. You're a massive college football fan. Yes, we've got a guy in Chris Gates who's partnered with us here at the Voice of College Football, who's got a training program called Training Camp, and Chris loves college football as well, and he's got a monthly fitness program designed specifically for football fans like nothing you've ever seen before. When you combine his coaching skills, his ability, and his willingness to interact with everyone up close and personal. And so then he's also got a community of sports fans and workout people that are going through exactly what you're going through, that are in the program, that will keep you accountable, and you will keep them accountable and motivated and pumped up. Because let's face it, we all have struggled to stay consistent with our workout. And maybe you're confused about what exercises work, which ones don't, in what sequence, and in what combination. Well, Training Camp is here to help. You get top-notch coaching from Chris. He delivers monthly workout plans to help remove all that guesswork, because you know what? This is not something we want to hear. But when you go to the gym and just kind of haphazardly work out, are you doing some good? Absolutely, you are. But are you making the most out of that 45 minutes to an hour at the gym? Probably not. You know what? I'm going to guarantee, no, you're not. That's not the most efficient, effective way to work out. I guarantee it. You are wasting your time to a certain extent. So this is a program that is going to help you see progress. Training Camp is centered around sustainable results, no crash diets, extreme routines. You can still, drink some beer, tailgate, enjoy the games, and still make progress. So grab the link in the description section. Give it a look. Try it out. There's a massive discount going on, and we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And make sure you are taking care of yourself first and foremost. So thanks for being here at the Voice of College Football. Next show is Florida State Live at 6. We've got a Mountaineer Locker Room show on the West Virginia channel at 8. But again, next, Florida State Live at 6. See you then.